It was my second day in Nashville, the day before I was going to run a marathon, so my priorities centered on eating. I first checked out Martin's BBQ joint, which is regarded as one of the best spots for barbecue in the city. Then I had dinner at City House, where chef and owner Tandy Wilson became the first Nashville chef to win a James Beard Award. It was a day certainly filled with great food and good memories. With the marathon a day away, my eating schedule was of the utmost importance, but first things first, I needed my coffee. Nashville, day 2, and like any sensible day, it begins with coffee. Oh, that's the stuff. I'm at a place called Rise, Biscuits, Donuts, and Righteous Chicken. I've actually been to one of these restaurants before, back last year in Savannah, Georgia, and I really liked it, so that's why I'm back here in Nashville. For breakfast, I kept things simple, coffee of course, and this sort of cinnamon roll biscuit. It's pretty solid. I'm gonna do a little reading here though. I kinda have to take things easy today because the marathon's tomorrow. I gotta save my strength, but so I'm just gonna try to relax and enjoy this day as much as I can, and of course, I'm still gonna eat a ton of food. While my cinnamon roll was pleasant, I had to keep things simple since I knew that I would be having a large lunch and dinner that day. Later in my trip, however, I did get a chance to go back to Rise and enjoy what the restaurant is mainly known for, their biscuit breakfast sandwiches. One of the sandwiches was the bacon, egg, and cheese, and I loved it. Those biscuits were perfect. The other one I had was the avocado toast, which once again hit the mark. After finishing my breakfast and doing a bit of reading, I set out to explore a bit of the city. Since I planned to show up to lunch right when the establishment opened, I didn't have a ton of time, so I just took a leisurely walk along Broadway and explored the surrounding area. I was surprised with just how alive the street was that early in the morning on a Friday, but any drinking or partying for me will have to wait until after my race. But soon enough, it was lunchtime. I went to one of the multiple locations of Martin's BBQ joint, which is considered to be one of the top spots for barbecue in the city. The Martin's I went to on 4th Avenue was massive, with tons of seating across 2 floors. The restaurant was established in 2006 by Pat Martin in Nolensville, Tennessee, a town that is about 20 miles south of Nashville. Martin wanted to celebrate West Tennessee's whole hog barbecue tradition. Naturally, I wanted to try as much as possible, so I got one of the samplers. I ordered the Big Brother sampler, which included 4 spare ribs, 6 ounces of brisket, and my choice of 2 sides, which including tax, I got for about $35. When my food was presented, I was in awe. It looked incredible. My only concern was that the sampler was meant to feed 2 people, which is normally not a problem for me since I have the appetite of 2 people. But since I had to have an early and filling dinner that day because of the marathon, I was a bit unsure if I would be hungry again in time for my dinner. Oh well, I set that problem aside for the moment and dove right in. I tried the spare ribs first and was blown away with my initial bite. The meat was so tender and juicy, but it was the spectacular flavor from the dry rub that impressed me the most. The rub just complemented the meat so well. Plus, I loved the fact that even though my sampler included just 4 ribs, they were pretty sizable. Jeez, just look at the size of this rib. It is massive. My lunch was off to a great start. Next, I turned my attention to the brisket, which was also delicious. Although it wasn't quite on the same level as the spare ribs, it nevertheless was fantastic. The meat had a great flavorful bark, a good layer of fat, and a nice smoke ring. Plus, it was pretty juicy. While the meat was delicious just as it was, I did enjoy how it paired with the restaurant's barbecue sauce, which added a bit of sweetness and spice. In terms of my sides, I went with a barbecue classic, the mac and cheese. Just like my 2 meats, it was delicious. It was nice and cheesy, perfectly balanced with a great texture and flavor. I really enjoyed it. My other side was a bit more unique for me. I got a cornbread hoe cake. While I've had plenty of cornbread before, I've never had it in that sort of fashion. However, I really liked it. It basically felt like I was eating a cornbread pancake. Now, it did pair pretty well with the barbecue sauce, but I couldn't help but think how delicious it could be with some butter and maple syrup. Nevertheless, I still appreciated the hoe cake for what it was. Overall, my lunch at Martin's was fantastic and I had no problem finishing everything on my platter meant for 2 people. Although I didn't consume much of the bread, mainly for the fact that I didn't want to get too full since it was imperative that I enjoy a filling dinner later.
That was so good. Those spare ribs, those were incredible. I am immensely satisfied. Alright, time to go do something while I wait for my next meal.
With my stomach filled for the moment, it was time for some sightseeing. While country music may be what Nashville is most known for from a musical standpoint, there's a lot more to the city than just country music, which is great for me since I'm not much of a fan of country. As a result, I got a ticket to the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum. The institution is a showcase for all musicians, regardless of the genre. Simply put, it's an incredible museum, and I felt that I learned so much over the course of my time there. While some of the most notable artists are covered, the museum makes a point to highlight the session musicians, producers, and engineers who are behind some of the most famous songs and records. There was an exploration of the recording technology, plus there was a ton of noteworthy instruments and memorabilia on display. Some artists even had their own individual exhibits like Johnny Cash and Jimi Hendrix. For me, the Hendrix exhibit was a real highlight. It was just plain cool. In summation, I really enjoyed exploring the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum, and I could have spent far more time there, but my need for coffee was urgent.
That museum was really good. I really enjoyed it. There was so much to see and read, but I wish I could have stayed longer. The only thing was, I needed my coffee. You know, Starbucks espresso isn't the greatest, but it does have caffeine, and that is exactly what I need right now.
After finishing my beverage, I took a leisurely walk up to the Germantown neighborhood of Nashville to dine at City House. The only problem was I was still pretty full from my lunch. Normally, I just wouldn't go to the restaurant that early, but because I had the marathon the next day, I didn't have much of a choice. I needed an early dinner so that I could get to sleep at a reasonable hour. Regardless, I was still very excited to dine at City House. Since opening in 2007, it's been a popular spot in Nashville. Chef and owner Tandy Wilson has been nominated for a James Beard Award numerous times, but finally took home the prize in 2016, becoming the first Nashville chef to do so. The restaurant is situated in a historic old home that was once used as an art studio. For the most part, I liked the design of the restaurant, especially the open kitchen, which I had a great view of. Although I kind of wished that there were more windows in the room I was in, nevertheless, City House is a pretty good space. The establishment serves rustic, seasonal, Italian-influenced food from pizza to pasta. It was a very attractive looking menu, but like I said before, I wasn't too hungry, so I started off light. I got the kale salad with roasted winter squash, roasted red onion Jezebel, peanuts and raisins with pecorino. Upon taking my first bites, I realized that I made an excellent choice as the salad was delicious. Now, if I did have more of an appetite, I probably would have skipped getting an appetizer and just focused on getting multiple pasta courses so I can carb load before my marathon. But like I said, I wasn't that hungry. Thankfully, getting the salad allowed me to still feel like I was getting a full meal, and it was also healthy and tasty. The dish was literally fall on a plate in salad form. It was fantastic. Next up was the bread gnocchi, which contained chicken sugo, stewed peppers, mustard greens, Parmesan cheese, and olive oil. I pretty much chose to dine at City House in large part because of their pasta offerings so I can carb load before my marathon, and the gnocchi didn't disappoint. The pasta was perfectly cooked. Each piece was such a textural delight. But it was all the other flavors in the dish which gave the course a comforting and rustic feel. The chicken was tender and juicy, while the mustard greens lent a touch of bitterness that was nicely balanced with the rich Parmesan cheese. The oily sort of broth imparted a nice lusciousness to all the components in the bowl. In summation, the gnocchi was a real delight to eat. To finish things up, I had to get a dessert. There were some nice options on the menu, but I had my eye on the cookies and cream icebox cake. The dish has become a signature dessert of the restaurant, but the flavors change with the seasons. My icebox cake consisted of chocolate sea salt, a toffee crumb, and caramel syrup. Flavor-wise, the dish was as good as it looked. I loved it. The cake was perfectly baked and contained rich layers of chocolate and cream. I'm a huge fan of caramel, and I feel like it goes well with a lot of desserts, and the cake was no exception. The nuts added a bit of saltiness as well as a nice textural component, while the cup of whipped cream made the cake even more of a treat. It was a wonderful and filling finish to my dinner at City House. Finally, it was time for the bill, which totaled to $53.53, but with my tip, I spent about $64. Compared to the New York City restaurants that I'm used to, I thought that was pretty good value. On a side note, I made a pit stop to the washroom before I left, and I was pretty amused by the toilet paper. Anyways, I had a great meal at City House.
That was such a good dinner. I'm absolutely stuffed, but now it's time to go back to the hotel and start freaking out a lot more about the marathon.
There is no question that I was nervous about my upcoming race, but I couldn't help but be happy with how my trip was shaping up so far. However, as I was about to find out, the most exciting moments of my adventure were still to come.